been able to join us today, and will join us perhaps later through the website. We started with kind of a welcome, here we come a caroling, and it occurred to me that this is like two carols. The beginning one, this little lilt, where they called the original title was "Here We Come a Wassailing," and wassailing was where the people in the neighborhood would go out and sing carols, and they kind of expected to have a treat after they would sing. So there might be a hot beverage, might be some holiday baking, but the first part is this kind of lilting melody, like people going out, and it really is pretty secular. Here we come caroling. Here we are not daily beggars who beg from door to door, and good master and good mistress, and so on. Then the second half is kind of hymn-like, and it goes into a different meter in 2 beats. Love and joy come to you, and glad to you, glad Christmas too, and God bless you. And that's the blessing part. And it's kind of interesting that the music changes and the meter changes for that blessing, where it's fun and then serious. Fun and then serious blessing. Okay, we're going to start with all of you joining us on number 30 in our books that Emily is pulling up, and she'll put up the slide for Joy to the World. We'll do this, do 2 stanzas of this, stanzas 1 and 4. Something about this hymn. Half of the time it's written in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th, in the 7th measure with a half note, so that it gets these full 3 beats. Let earth receive her King, 2, 3, and let it. And half of the time it's King, let every heart. Well, if we go on, and that's the way it is in the hymnal, they don't have that extra measure in there. It only comes out to 19 measures. So my guess is that, and it's just a guess, that Handel, who wrote the original music, would have done the longer version because it comes out to 20 measures. And generally, the composers of that day like to have something that made a little more sense in terms of the length. So in this book, it does have that half note. Just something to think about and to kind of look out for when you sing that. So whether it has one way or the other, you'll be ready for it. Number 20, Hark the Herald Angels Sing. We're going to do 2 stanzas here, 1 and 3. So this is, it starts with this ascending fourth. So it sounds kind of like a fanfare. And if you've wondered why fanfares have got this outlining the chords, it really goes to the instruments that are playing it. And brass instruments, especially in the earlier time, a lot of those trumpets and lower horns, like our trombone of today, would play by just changing the embouchure. And so the easiest thing to play was the perfect fourths and perfect fifths. And so probably something to do with why the fanfares were that way. Hark the herald angels sing. And angels sing, glory to the newborn King. Peace on earth and mercy mild, God and sinners reconciled. Joyful you nations rise, join the triumph of the skies, with the gallant host proclaim, Christ is born in Bethlehem. Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. Hail the him-born Prince of Peace, hail the Son of Righteousness. Light and life to all he brings, with healing and his wings. While he lay his glory by, learn that men no more may die. Born to raise the sons of earth, born to give him second birth. Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. And now a very familiar carol, the first Noel. They're all familiar. The only problem is that we only have so much time. I was telling Chris and Alice, and by the way, my wife Alice back here, Chris Sherwin, our director of worship and music, have been kind enough to join me when when I get too hoarse and I might drop out on a note or two. But anyway, this one, sometimes you see it written the first Noel, N-O-E-L, sometimes Noel, N-O-W-E-L-L. And in looking up some things about this carol, the background is listed as both French and English. In some books, in fact, it says French-English carol. And of course, as we know, the English Channel isn't that wide, and movement between France and England was pretty easy, in spite of the fact that they were throughout history sometimes at odds. But you can sing it N-O-E-L today, even though it'll sound the same as N-O-W-E-L-L. So I better check my... get my key. There it is. Verse 2. Number 42, Once in Royal David's City. This was written, sometimes you'll see the word, just the word gauntlet, and it actually is connected to a name, Henry J. Gauntlet, who lived, a British hymn writer, writer who lived from 1805 to 1876. Verse 2. And that's probably a carol that isn't sung as often, but a wonderful, wonderful text, as you could see. Next, number 39, O Little Town of Bethlehem. A little bit about the background of the text here. This was written, the text was written by the Reverend Philip Brooks, who lived from 1835 to 1893. And he was the rector at Trinity Episcopal Church in Boston. And he was really known as the rector of that church for his work with children. And he wrote this text after a trip to the Holy Land. And he, in his journal, had experiences of being in that area and actually being out in the countryside at night when the stars were shining bright, and in some of the ancient sites there in the Holy Land. And he wrote this text for his children back in his parish, and then it was set to this music by Louis Redner. But really a beautiful story of how this text came to be. And it was a way, and the four verses, we'll sing two of them today, 1 and 4. But if you look at over, you'll see that it really is almost a description of the Christian experience. O little town of Bethlehem, where Christ is born, and O holy child, descend to us, we pray, cast out our sin, enter in, and so on. It is a lovely text that he intended for his Sunday school children. So let's start that again because I don't think I said what the two verses. We'll sing verse 4 now. Oh, holy Church of Bethlehem, we send to us to pray. Cast our thoughts together, reborn us today. We hear the Christmas angels calling stand. The hopes and news abide with us, Lord, okay. Speaking of children, one of the things that one of the songs of Christmas that most of us remember from our childhood, if we probably, hopefully remember lots of them, but one of them that many of us sang and in pageants and Christmas programs and so on was The Friendly Beasts. And we're going to, many of us probably remember perhaps the verse where you had a solo or a duet, or maybe it was the first graders that sang a verse and the second graders that sang a verse and so on. We're going to do 3 of these stanzas. There are 6 that are listed, verses 1, 2, and 4. So Jesus our brother, I said the donkey, and I said the sheep. Jesus, our only kind and good, was only born this day alone, a friendly best along his shore. Jesus, our only kind and good. I said that he shaggy and brown. I carried his mother up hill and down. I carried her safely to Bethlehem's town. I said the donkey shaggy and brown. I said the sheep fairly born. I gave him my wool for his blanket worn. He wore my coat and Christmas morn. I said the sheep is a and another one that you no doubt remember from your childhood, many of us do, Away in a Manger. This one, there are several settings, melodic settings of this, but we're going to do the one that is perhaps the most familiar, the one that actually starts with a whole descending scale, but not a scale from do down to do, but from sol down to sol. And you throw in a little rhythm and you've got a lovely melody. melody to beat, isn't it? And so simple with its use of scales. Now we're going to look at a very historic melody, but this one is sharing a little anniversary with us, and page 54. What child is this? It is set to the ancient melody that uses some modal. I won't go into that, but some modes that are not just like our major and minor scales, but the text by William Dix. William Dix was his middle name, William Chatterton Dix, wrote this text in 1871, the same year that Emmanuel was formed, the original Emmanuel Church. So this text is 150 years old, as is our Emmanuel congregation. So kind of an interesting parallel in that case. How are we doing on time? I think we're doing okay. Let's do the first and second stanzas here. Okay, now we're going to go from an ancient English melody, Greensleeves, to a couple of French melodies. And we'll look at the first one, number 4, Angels We Have Heard on High. And then we're going to kind of pair it with another French carol, Ding Dong Merrily on High. So they're both carols referring on high, the old concept that heaven was there. If you have been at any of these luncheons, which we have done for a number of years for Aging Splendidly, you'll know that I love these Gloria passages in both of these, and that's a great Gloria that comes back a second time, and only to be outdone by the Gloria in Ding Dong Merrily on High. So we're going to do both of these. So first, Angels We Have Heard on High, verses 1 and 4. And then we'll go right into Ding Dong Merrily on High, and we'll do just the first verse of that. Angels we have heard, sweetly singing o'er the plains, and the mountains hear it cry, echoing their joyous strains. In excelsis Deo, singing in a major lead, whom the choirs of angels praise. Mary, Joseph, Mary, while our hearts in love we praise. And then, Ding Dong Merrily on High. Ding dong merrily on high, and the bells on the hill. Ding dong merrily the song is ringed with angels sing. And then we repeat that. Okay, you got to admit those glorias are great fun. And now we're going to, so many of these historic carols come from from France, England, Germany. We are now going to turn to one of American descent, Go Tell It on the Mountain, an African American spiritual. Arguably, probably the most, there are many others, but the most popular of the African American spirituals for Christmas. One that we most all know. So verses 1 and 3, 15, Go Tell It on the Mountain. Silent was my Okay. And to change the mood to a carol that, when we think of carols, probably the first one on our in our thoughts, and a beautiful one, but also a challenging one because it has probably the widest range of notes to be sung. And this is our old favorite Silent Night. And of course, you remember the story of this coming, whether it's true or not, I wasn't there, so I can't say for sure, but in the country church where the organ had given out. And so Franz Gruber had a lute or a guitar of that time, back, I believe, in the perhaps 1400s, 1500s, and we ended up with Silent Night. We'll sing the first two stanzas. Okay, lovely carol. Number 17, Good Christians All Rejoice. This is a German carol, and we've had to rethink some of the texts, of course, and here we use the word all. Some carol books and hymnals use the word friends. There is another hymn that is an Easter hymn, Good Christian Friends, Rejoice and Sing. So I think it's kind of nice to use the word all here. But originally, the word men was there. Even though it was intended as mankind, we know that the concepts of equity, equality were not the same in that time, centuries ago, as they are today. So it's important that we are inclusive with this text. So good Christians all rejoice with heart and soul and voice. And we'll do verses 1 and 3. And just to call your attention to something in the third stanza that jumped out at me. The third stanza in the third line says, calls you one and calls you all to gain his everlasting hall. And some children might think that at Christmas time that should be spelled H-A-U-L. Well, it's not. But it's interesting here that the concept of heaven is a hall, a banquet hall. And as we're going to finish today in a few just in a couple of tunes, with Deck the Hall with Boughs of Holly. I think there's kind of an interesting connection there. Calls you one and calls you all to gain his everlasting hall. Hall being heaven. So just a thought as we get to that third stanza. And so with a nice lilt. Good Christians all rejoice with heart and soul and voice. Listen now to what we say. News, news, Jesus Christ is born today. Oxen as before him up, he is in a manger now. Christ is born today. Christ is born today. Verse 3. Good Christians all rejoice, heart and soul and voice. Oh, you need not fear the grave. Peace, peace, Jesus Christ is born to save. Calls you on and calls you up to be his everlasting hall. Christ is born to save. Christ is born to save. Well, if we were having lunch together, and I hope we can again next year, but we take it a day at a time and a week at a time. I would at this point say, does anybody have any requests? So, we don't have the slides so that we don't, but we're going to sing Jingle Bells. We're going to sing Jingle Bells, and you can pronounce it jingle or yingle or whatever you want. And this is on page 28. And I think we will do all three stanzas of this. When I was teaching, I always had kids who would wonder about what some of these words meant, and they didn't know what a bobtail was. And oftentimes, in fact, I've seen it written where the word bobtail is plural, bobtails. But I pointed out to them, what does it say in the first line? It says, dashing through the snow in a one-horse open sleigh. So that tells us that it is just one bobtail. Well, what is a bobtail? The horse would have a long flowing tail, but a horse that's pulling a cart would have that tail up in a bob, into like a bun. And my younger students would always really love this part of the story. And there was a good reason for that, because the people sitting in the cart didn't want that tail to pick up the horse droppings and put it in the laps and in the faces of the people in the cart. And so there was a good reason why that one horse pulling the sleigh, or in the sleigh, one horse pulling the sleigh would have a bobbed tail. So we have Jingle Bells, all three stanzas. Dashing through the snow, horse open sleigh, o'er the fields we go, laughing all the way. Sun bobtail ring, making spirits bright. What fun it is to ride and sing a sleighing song tonight. Jingle bells, jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Jingle bells, jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Day or two ago, I thought I'd take a ride, and soon Miss Fanny Bride was laughing by my side. The horse was lean and lame, misfortune was his lot. He got into a drifted bank, and we upsot. Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse sleigh. Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a just wait a minute here, because some of you may be thinking, what is upsot? Well, it's upset, but made so that it rhymes with lot. So it's the James Pierpont having his fun with the English language a little bit there. So we got upsot, not upset. Okay, verse 3, and now the ground is white, go it while you're young, take the girls tonight, and sing the sleighing song, just love till night, for 40 minutes, then hitch into an open sleigh and crack you take the lead, jingle bells, jingle all the way, oh, what fun it is to ride in one open sleigh, jingle bells, jingle all the way, oh, what fun it is to ride in one open sleigh. Okay. Raise your hand if you haven't sung that third stanza in a long, long time. Yes. It's a tongue twister, but tongue twisters are fun. It's good for all of us. Okay, and I want to thank you for being with us today in real time, those of you that are here, or those of you that are catching this at a later time. We're glad to be able to share this with you. And as I had mentioned, we here at Emmanuel are celebrating 150 years of our congregation's existence. It started just outside of downtown St. Paul, and then through, as it grew and as the city grew, it moved several times and had some mergers, is now here across from McAllister College on South Snelling, just a block south of Grand Avenue. I also want to mention, for those of you here in real time and those catching it soon, that we are going to be having in-person Christmas Eve services here at Emmanuel, and they will be at 3 o'clock, 4:30, and 10 o'clock in the evening. Emmanuel has a policy of requiring masks, so bring your mask and come and sing more beautiful music of Christmas, and come for Christmas worship on Christmas Eve. Anything that you'd like to add?
Just make sure they register online.
Okay, yes, they're asking that you register online so that we know how many are coming, and we have a limit to how many can be in the sanctuary, and we'll have overflow facilities available for those that, so we'll have room, but please register online at the website ilcsp.org. Am I right? Is that correct?
And
yes.
Dave, if they want to carol outside, we're going to be caroling a week from this coming Sunday. That's December the 12th.
Okay, December 12th, outside following the Sunday morning service at about 10, gathering about 10:30.
About 10:30, and we're going to stay outside and be masked, so it'll be really safe singing if you'd like to join.
We'll gather at 10:30
in the music room.
In the music room after the service, the 9:30 service, and go out perhaps in 2 groups, or depending on how many are here, and sing carols to people, and it'll be all outdoors with masks. Okay? So we'll close with Deck the Hall with Boughs of Holly. As I mentioned before, it's just one hall. We're decking a hall with the boughs of holly. It's okay if you do it with more than one too, but that's, I think the original was the Welsh had a big hall, gathering hall, town hall in mind when they did this. Maybe the church fellowship hall, for example. Deck the hall with boughs of holly, fa la 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 la. comrades and lessons. La 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 la. Sing the joyous song together. La 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 la. Heedless of the wind and weather. La 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 la. Okay, thank you for sharing this time with us.